those are the tools that you need.
We're setting up the camera on part 3 of Get Money on Craigslist, just to show you how easy this $125 is, and how there's more of these on here. Now the camera tripping on me.
Okay, Cindy, I'm gonna bring you off mute.
Hey, Mr. Craigslist King.
I know you mentioned about there was a refresh button in case you need that.
Craigslist King.
I don't do that with
Come check us out.
Okay, let me, I can bring up a picture to maybe help you guys.
Craigslist
See
King.
here. Okay, so this picture here looks like your screen. So you see how I've got the big red box over the top portion where your web address would be?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, so this is what the button looks like, that circle with the arrow in it. For Internet Explorer, it's the one on the top, and for Google Chrome, it's the one on the bottom here.
Okay, I got it now. Thank you.
That's the button for.
All right, good technical assistant.
And thanks for having me bring that up. So I'm going to drop you back onto mute, and I'm going to introduce you to one of your moderators today, Steve, and he's going to go through a few more details of our day.
Steve is the moderator. Let's see what he has to talk about. Like I said, this is part 3 of the Craigslist King videos. How you can make a money $125.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Steve.
He's one of the guys that put this together, I guess. Each one of these guys are getting paid $125 to do 3 hours of giving our opinion. Very simple. You got a computer, internet at home. You can do this, make money, make $500 a day. This is $125. I'm doing one of these. I'll probably do a few other things. So I make about $200-300 a day. You know, I ain't gonna work, kill myself. It's good enough.
So I'm curious, I saw a number of folks, or I'm curious if we've had anybody here who's ever served as a juror before, either in a civil or a criminal case. If you could raise your hand for me. All right, see a few folks here. Brandon, I'm going to take you off mute here. Brandon, are you there?
I am.
Okay, so I saw you had your hand up. What kind of case was it that you served as a juror on?
I don't know. We were elected as jurors, and then when we arrived to the court for the morning of the trial, we were all released and not really explained why.
Oh, okay. So you never actually were seated before. I guess you were called for jury duty. Okay. Okay. We'll put you back here on mute. Let's see. There's a couple other folks. I think I saw. Was it De'Ara? Did you have your hand up? You all can put your hand up again if you have been on a jury before.
Now this is interesting. He's asking about, have you ever been in a jury? Now I know they asked that question, and I don't think they wanted you to do that. So he's probably checking to see if somebody.
Legal system, there are a criminal case, which is very often
anybody has
folks are interested or
said that they haven't been in a trial and they have actually been.
Hear about those more often in the news or read about those in the newspaper, and that's actually not the kind of case that we're going to be working with today. What we are going to be working with is what's called a civil lawsuit. And a civil lawsuit, what you have most often at issue is money. And you have parties on both sides of the case. You have what's called a plaintiff or plaintiffs. Sometimes there's more than one. And they are quite simply the people who are bringing the lawsuit. They're claiming to have been harmed or hurt in some way, and they have therefore brought their claim to the legal system to get some type of compensation or some type of result that will put them back in the position that they were before. And so, for instance, you might have, if you're ever in a car accident before, maybe you were sitting at a stoplight, you get rear-ended by somebody, and you go through the process, you file your insurance claim, and maybe you feel like you're not getting sufficient money for if you had any medical injuries to cover your hospital bills, your doctor's bills, or maybe you're not getting enough to have your car covered, your car repairs covered. So at some point you may decide to file a lawsuit.
You get to file the square, work from home. Just like I said, you go to www.googleboost.bizupstart.biz, and you can figure out how you can sign up to work at home, at Starbucks, at, independently, doing basically your own business.
But also,
buying having jobs like this.
Lawsuit, again, I mentioned you have the plaintiff or plaintiff.
But you gotta have a business entity type idea if you want to make it something that's going to be a long-term successful thing. You gotta come up with a business idea, genre idea that you're gonna present, and there's ways to get it done.
It's important to keep in mind that in a civil lawsuit, it's the plaintiffs that have what's called the burden of proof. And so because they're bringing their lawsuit, they have the legal obligation to prove their case. And the defendants really don't have to prove anything. But that's not to say that they aren't given an opportunity to come into court like the plaintiffs and give their side of the case. And so again, later on in the day, we'll read to you what are called the jury instructions, and that's a little bit more information that will explain the rules of law that you're going to apply. But again, in the morning, in the early part of the day, you're going to be hearing presentations from the attorneys in this case. This is a real lawsuit that's pending in court. And the parties have agreed to go outside of the court system to come before a group of jurors like yourself to try and get a sense of what would happen or what would likely happen if this case does in fact proceed to trial. So in that way, you are serving a very important role for the parties in this case, because your decision is going to absolutely have an impact on what happens in this case as it moves forward. So to give you a little bit of background of how we got to this point, I don't know if any of you all watch legal shows on TV, Law and Order, or going way back, LA Law, if you remember that one. But, very often in those cases you have, sometimes you'll have the gotcha moments where somebody runs into court with a mystery document and hands it up to the judge, and the judge says, oh, this decides the case. This is a piece of evidence that the plaintiff should win based on this piece of evidence. And, that makes for great television, but in reality, that's not what happens. And that's because the parties, before they proceed to court, have gone through what's called the discovery process. And the discovery process is really simply an exchange of information between the parties. And so once the plaintiff or plaintiffs bring their lawsuit, the judge will oversee the discovery process. And during that process, the parties exchange information. So that could be in the form of documents that are relevant to the case. That can be in the form of what are called depositions. And depositions are simply testimony under oath. That is, party will be called for a deposition. They are put under oath by a court reporter, and one or both of the attorneys or the attorneys involved in the case have an opportunity to ask questions of that witness under oath. And that testimony is given the same level of importance. It's essentially the same type of testimony that you would hear if you were in court. And so you should treat that with just as much reverence and accept it in the same way that you would accept testimony if you were watching it in court. And so, again, the parties have exchanged information between one another, and they've really agreed what the information is that will be presented here today. So, as you listen to the presentations from the attorneys on both sides, we want you to take the information that they present to you at face value. In other words, they're not trying to mislead you or confuse you, but at the end of the day, it's you as the jurors who are going to decide what weight to place on any particular evidence or testimony that you might hear. And then once we finish with all the attorney presentations, we're going to break you up into a couple groups. I'll work with one group. My colleague Kelly will work with the other. And you'll have an opportunity to deliberate this case in the same way that jurors would do at the end of a trial in court. And the party's hope is that at the end of those deliberations, you'll return a verdict and tell them how you think this case should turn out. So a couple things to keep in mind. Reiterate what Lauren said. It's really important that we get that feedback from you as you watch the presentation. We're also going to be having you answer some poll questions throughout the course of the morning and after each of the presentations to kind of get a sense of where you are as you hear more and more information. You're certainly welcome to take notes if you'd like. You can have those notes available to you when we go into our deliberations, but you're also not required to take them. So if you think that it might be helpful for you to jot down, key things as you listen to them, so that you have, recollection or a memory of what was talked about during the presentations, that's great. If not, it's no problem at all. So I think that I've covered pretty much everything I wanted to do. Before we get into the first presentation, which is going to be made on behalf of the plaintiff in this case, does anybody have any questions about anything that I've covered? Anything like that? Okay. So I don't see any questions or any hands raised. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to our plaintiff's attorney, Ms. Spinelli. Are you there?
Did it say
Ms. Spinelli, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So I'm going to go ahead and take down my webcam and bring your webcam up, and I will turn the floor over to you to make your presentation on behalf of your client.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Hope you can hear me, making it as loud as I can. My name is Kate Spinelli, and I'm an attorney. I'm representing the plaintiff, who we're going to hear a lot about today. Her name is Terry Isley, and before we start the presentation, I wanted to thank you all for sitting through our presentation and hearing what we have to say. Your feedback and your input is extremely valuable to the process, so for that we appreciate it, and I certainly appreciate you taking time on this Friday to listen to the case. So without further ado, let's get started. Go to the next slide, please. Okay, so what is this case about? This lawsuit is a personal injury lawsuit. I represent the plaintiff, who's Terry Isley. Terry Isley was involved in an incident on New Year's Day of 2010 when she fell through the deck that was attached to her rented mobile home that was at the Oaks of Atlantic Beach in Atlantic Beach, Florida. Next slide, please. This is the area where my client, Terry Isley, fell. If you'll see in the portion, there's a large hole. That hole did not exist before Terry Isley fell. That hole existed by virtue of her falling 3 feet to the ground below. Next slide. This is my client, Terry Isley. Terry Isley is 49 years old. She'll turn 50 this November. She's a mom of 4 and a grandmother of 8. And as you've heard before, this accident occurred on New Year's Day. So for Terry, New Year's Day was a day of excitement, of new beginning, first day of the year. And unfortunately for Terry, New Year's Day 2010 turned out to be the worst day of her life.
She jumping her head around drunk. Fell through the damn.
Who are the defendants? The defendants in this case are the Oaks of Atlantic Beach, which owns the trailer or the mobile home where Terry Isley was living on New Year's Day of 2010, as well as Rebecca Armbruster. Rebecca was the manager at the Oaks of Atlantic Beach
manager gets sued
at the time of the incident. Next slide. To give you an overview of what the Oaks of Atlantic Beach is, it's a mobile home facility that houses about 289 mobile homes, 72 of which the Oaks of Atlantic Beach owns. The stars below left of that screen, that's the area where Terry Isley was living on the New Year's Day of 2010, where he had signed a lease agreement back in June of 2009. Next slide, please. So what do you hear about? What is this case about? And this case is about taking responsibility for the consequences of your actions. This case is about putting profit over safety. This case is also about blaming Terry for the incident. Next slide, please. Now, this is a basic overview of the timeline that preceded and occurred after the incident. So as you'll see, and I'll show you as we go along the documents that support it. Back in May of 2009, Terry Isley and her father, Ralph Isley, signed a lease agreement to rent a mobile home at the Oaks of Atlantic Beach. That lease began on June 1st, 2009. Now, before Terry moved into the mobile home, she and Rebecca Armbruster did a walkthrough of the property. And the property in question had a deck in the front and a deck in the back. And the deck was a very important part of Terry's decision to sign this lease. Why? And that's because Ralph Isley, who's Terry's father, he's in his 80s, he's in a wheelchair. He's not mobile, so he needs access to the home and can't go upstairs, so he needs the ramp from which the deck came to access the premises. Why else was it important? Because Terry's uncle Pasquale Ferraro, he was also going to be living with her, as was her 10-year-old grandson, for whom she had been taken care of, as well as her fiance, Leslie Prospect. So Terry Isley does her walkthrough,